Live stream 116. The numbers are incrementing. I actually do manage to have a bias or a postcode cam this time around. It's vital because one thing about the impact board is the postcode is in the IO shield, and just the way I orientate my boards usually on the bench table, I just can't see that. And if I want to do any sort of memory overclocking or anything like that, I need it. So how's everyone doing? It's been about 3 weeks since my last stream, and I think I had a reasonable excuse or two. So first, the lockdown lifted here in Sydney, Australia, and I spent some time outside and doing things that are not being locked in a room, like overclocking. And then I got invited to do a bit of pre-launch benching of Alder Lake, so I couldn't say no to that either. Wait for a few people to arrive. I did say it was going to be in like 20 minutes, but I had everything set up already, so what's the point in waiting? I want to do a little bit of benching, even though I did a lot of benching last weekend. So yeah, that was interesting. Took Friday off work, did pretty much an entire day of benching Friday, and then Saturday spent most of the day benching together with Dinos22, who got us some. Hi Dog Rigger, welcome. We had some chips. There were some i5s that we didn't touch. There were I think 5 i7s, and we just benched the best one. And I mean, it ended up being a good chip. Now that the other scores are out, it's sort of interesting to see them. Certainly, it looks like core binning is becoming a bigger and bigger thing on Intel, which I think started. I mean, it's always been a thing, but it probably sort of started properly with the 11900K, where people were doing are doing 7.15 32M, but then still only the sort of regular 6.8 or whatever for multi. But yeah, any of the single threaded stuff we didn't even attempt. So 32M was slow for us, but it's tricky, right? It's a new architecture, it's a new process, and it's a new memory architecture as well. So process wise, I wouldn't say that I find it to be more have higher power density, and full pod works fine on the Zeus. So process actually doesn't really sort of directly come into the benching experience, at least on a Zeus. I don't really know what's going on with Gigabyte. Didn't have a board. I don't know if they're having issues or not, but on a Zeus it's like really plug and play from full pod perspective. Had the best chip had a cold boot bug of about -168. The second best chip was like in the -150 range, but both full pod just with LN2 mode enabled, no extra volts required on the Apex, at least on the BIOS we had. Where the challenges come in is with the micro, not so much with the process, but with the micro architecture and with the RAM. Let me just run a bench here. So much delayed, but this is actually sort of my proper debut in terms of Vermeer is what it's called, right? And it feels, even just after 2 days of benching, it feels really weird going back to DDR4. DDR5 is interesting. I'll get into it later when more people get on stream, but Let's try 1800 FCLK. This should do it on auto volts, but I'll give it, no, 1.65 should be fine. I have a new capture card as well. And it does this weird no signal thing when there's no signal. Now, I don't know if, I mean, it's good in the sense that other capture cards will give you a black screen for no signal and a black screen for a black screen. So it's hard to know what's really going on. So in that sense, I kind of like the fact that whenever there's no signal, the capture card is really like upfront and honest about it and just tells you, hey, no capture card, no, sorry, no signal. What's a good long thing I can run? The problem is everything's so fast now on these modern systems. Whatever, I'll just do a run of 1080p. Doug Gregor, what's DDR5 availability like in France these days? It's really bad here. I heard things like no stock on Newegg until mid-December. So that's, yeah, I mean, so to go into the DDR5 thing a little bit, in practical terms, there are 3 ICs on the market right now. There's Samsung, Hynix, and Micron. And I don't know, so basically what happened is we just had one kit, and it was Hynix, sorry, it was Micron. Now I'm doubting myself. I think Micron is the bad one, basically. So Micron will cap out at 5200, 5333, 5400, somewhere in that range. Samsung and Hynix will do, depends on cast latency and voltage and whether you're on call and so on. We didn't have any, so I can't tell you anything about those ICs. But from info I got, it's like 6,000, 600 maybe even benchable. So my nice little run earlier was 82, but that was with performance boost on. Let me try like 4.2 or something, like 1.275. That should work, right? Man, what's going on? Is everyone on holidays or something? I would have thought people would want to watch an Alder Lake stream, FAQ type thing, but you know, people have lives. Then again, I haven't streamed for about 3 days, maybe 3 weeks, so maybe people don't know I exist anymore. Can't blame them. Yeah, so 3 different ICs. We had the worst ones. We were really limited for any sort of bench that needs memory. But still a really interesting memory architecture just to play around with anyway, because you have that sort of fully integrated voltage regulator on the actual DIMM itself. So you have more voltages to play with, you know. On the previous generation of Intel, you had system agent, IO, those are more on the memory controller side, and then you had VDIMM and VTT. You still have system agent. That's the only voltage on the memory controller side that I could see in the little benching that we did. But on the memory side, I think they call them VDD and VDDQ. So it's again like DIMM voltage and some sort of like minor voltage, that I think the minor voltage always has to be lower, like equal or lower to the VDD. And the kit that we had, it was like a generic team group 4800 bin, and that had stock volts of 1.15, which, you know, considering DDR4 is like 1.35 and above, that's already quite interesting. And then from the sort of info I got from other people on ambient, you wouldn't necessarily expect too much sort of scaling above 1.45. No, I wasn't talking about support. I was just saying when you go into an e-retailer website, can you buy DDR5? I mean, I'm elite, quote unquote, on HardwareBot, but I don't necessarily get all that much support either. Like last gen I did get a Tachyon from Gigabyte, but I'm trying to not like tell lies here. Like let me try and remember, like, what have I've gotten one chip on one board so far. I think that was one gen where that was the case, but otherwise I was more saying availability because of global supply chain issues. That was more my sort of concern. I mean, if it's gonna be $500 for a kit of RAM, that's benching. I don't mind spending that, but it's just that we just don't have any kits around at all, you know. DRAM timing. Pretty much my info that I got about DDR5 was just looking at the profiles on the Asus board. By the way, something funny that I saw earlier, I haven't really used this Impact very much. The fact that it has an Intel LAN controller, even though it's an AMD platform, that's kind of funny. 2x16, no, we want 2x8. Now these profiles are a bit weird. No, I want 12, 12, 12, 12, and everything else can sort of stay the same. Where's our CAS? No, I don't think I have maximum set, so I'll keep this at 1.7 and then just 3600 again. And then timing wise, it feels like it becomes a much bigger challenge on DDR5, because if your XMP or your stock is CAS 38, it's sort of like, maybe it's just a mental thing, but if you, I mean, on DDR4 you might have an XMP of CAS 15, and then you tighten to CAS 12, and then you can bench. You know, it's like, do you want to run 15, 14, 13, or 12? There you go. Those are your options. Ooh, okay. That had a little bit of an issue. Where's our reset button? I can use the camera to find it. Yeah. Yeah, okay. But on DDR5, it's like, do you want to you could potentially, I saw results all the way down to like CAS 26 or 28. So it's like, do you want to tighten all the way down to 26? Or do you want to maybe even loosen to like 40? You know, it's like you've got all these values to play with. Not that I am a particularly proficient memory overclocker to begin with, but given that added layer of complexity with the extra voltages and the extra timings, it's really interesting. And then I saw some people ran cold RAM, which is really interesting again. You know, having that come back from DDR3 is pretty cool. The Micron that we had didn't require max mem, but maybe so it's looking like DDR5 SAMI is going to be on top. I don't know, maybe closely followed by the other IC, but I wonder if DDR5 SAMI needs max mem the same way DDR4 SAMI does. If someone knows, please put it in the chat. I'm very curious. But yeah, the reality of it is, in terms of benching, I mean, with the global supply chain issues the way they are, and the fact that maybe this DDR5 IMC in Alder Lake isn't that great, and with Ryzen 4, is that what we're on to? Yeah, Ryzen 4 coming in Q1 2022. So basically, in like, if you consider, you know, people take time off for Christmas and stuff anyway, so basically in 3 months time max, we'll have a second DDR5 platform to play with, and it's going to be DDR5 native. So they, let's say, have and it's, you know, might learn from the mistakes, or just learn lessons from this first platform. I mean, they have, let's say, more of an incentive to get it right? And then the supply issues will probably abate a little bit by then as well. So I feel like the smart money, I mean, unless, you know, obviously if you're Splave or whoever, if you're someone who's like trying to maintain a ranking, I think you just throw money at everything, time and effort and money at everything, and you bench Alder Lake between now and AM5. But if you're like me, I'm like, okay, I got to play with DDR5 now, but if I don't touch it again until AM5, I'll be like, what am I really missing? It's like it's in its infancy anyway, you know. But really interesting. It just gives you that strange feeling, you know, in your DDR tech. I started benching in 2007. So to give you guys an idea, I started benching on first gen Ryzen, which is obviously DDR4, AMD's first mainstream DDR4 platform, and then pretty quickly did Intel as well. And at the time, it was like the 7700K was the big thing. So you're kind of on like the second or third gen of DDR4 on the Intel side, and the first gen on AMD side. So this is the first time as a bencher that I've experienced this transition between technologies, and it's very interesting to see. And you know, folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels very different to the other transitions. I mean, SDR to DDR, I don't remember much about. Certainly there were sockets because the IMC, the memory controller, wasn't integrated yet at that time. There certainly were sockets, platforms where both was supported. I don't know what's a good clock on ambient anymore on this stuff. 4.5. Sure, let's give it a go. So you can't really compare that. I mean, the only sort of honest to goodness DDR tech transition that we have experienced before this one is 3 to 4, because both Intel and AMD were on IMCs already and on 3. Even 2 to 3, you had 775, which didn't have an IMC. Can we break 100 FPS today? And 3 to 4 was, you know, there was that Z170 DDR3 monkey business that people are still using for competitions nowadays to get a leg up. But in general, 3 to 4 was a pretty clean cut. Like, you couldn't, you know, at the time HEDT had more relevance than I would argue it has today. And people ran a lot of X99 because that's the only way you could get a 6 core or an 8 core. So, and when Haswell E came out, it's like, you know, you got to get DDR4, even though it's in its infancy, even though it's expensive, even though, you know, you even have to get 4 sticks of it because it's the quad channel platform, all that good stuff. But it's just, you're just sort of forced into it. Whereas now we're seeing like Strix boards and stuff that are DDR4, and it's, you know, it's a totally different scenario. You know, you have those supply constraints, so it's not just a question of early adopter tax. It's literally, no matter, in certain scenarios, you know, no matter what you want to pay, you may not still be able to get the stuff you want. So there's, you know, there's sort of 3 factors. There's, is the IMC good enough? Are people going to regret going DDR5 Alder Lake now because, you know, maybe it doesn't even really give you all that much performance boost over DDR4 on the same platform because the DDR4 memory controller is so mature. And then the second issue is supply. You know, can you get the kits? And if you can get the kits, are they a reasonable price? And even if you can get a kit, is it a good bin, or are all the good bins coming in a couple of months' time? And then the third issue is, you know, it's going to get better, right? It's like, even if you can get the kit you want now, maybe a new IC comes out. You know, it's, yeah, there's a few things going on there. tell you, I mean, I'm not, look, I really don't want to misrepresent myself as being a big sort of 1900 is 3800. Sample, please. Sample of what? A sample of Alder Lake. I don't want to misrepresent myself as being this person who really knows a lot about daily benching, daily gaming, but it seems to me Alder Lake is a pretty good. I saw notice me streamer. Yes, I do notice you. But it seems to me something like a 12600 KF is really good value. You slap it into a DDR4 board, you know, just keep your current kit, and you're just laughing all the way to the bank. You know, like I said it on stream at the time. I'm not. This is not revisionist history. When the 5000 series Ryzen came out, I was like, "Fuck this! This is expensive." Every launch, I got an R5 1600. I got an R5 2600. I skipped the 3600, but I at least gave it a good think. I was like, this is it. This is AMD's big throw. This is Intel is never going to be as down as they were with the Ryzen 3000 series because they were stuck in 14 nanometer. They were on whatever 9900K or whatever it was at the time. I thought that the 3000 series was going to have better performance. I think the price was okay, but I thought it was going to have better performance. The 3600 was a great buy. It probably still is a good buy for some people. But when when they didn't even make a 5600 non-X, after I had basically bought the non-X 6-core all the way along throughout the history of Ryzen, the brief history of Ryzen, I was like, not only does the SKU not 5950, okay. Not only does the SKU that I want not exist, the next SKU up, or actually the very lowest SKU available. You've got to remember as well. I'm sorry I'm going off on a tangent here, but I really think it's important to sort of give some historical context to these sorts of things. When Ryzen came out, they went all the way from a quad core no SMT all the way to 8-core plus SMT high bin. So you went all the way from Ryzen 3 1200 or whatever it was, all the way to Ryzen 7 at the time, 1800X. So you went like to pretty much an amazing CPU that could do everything that you needed it to do at the time in 2017, to like a pretty bottom of the barrel chip that still gave you the Ryzen experience, right? And then over the years, they just kept like pruning off. They kept, you know, was there a Ryzen 3 for the 2000 series? I think they even got rid of that. So there was a justified sort of criticism of first gen Ryzen, saying there's too many SKUs. It's too complex. So you've got your Ryzen 3 1200, Ryzen 3 1400. I don't know if there was a 1400X, but there was a 1500 and a 1500X, if I remember right. A 1600, 1600X, 1700, 1700X, 1800X. Just too much. But they could have kept the length and breadth of their lineup while still reducing the number of SKUs. You know, maybe the bottom Ryzen 3 does have hyper-thread. I keep, you know, mixing it up, but SMT, you know what I mean. Whoops. Where's a good score? 82. 91.4 has been our best. So that last little tune up there didn't do very much for us. Let's just max out our F clock. Thanks for the sub, FBNSS. Very much appreciated. Coming back from 3 weeks off. Hope you're doing fine down there in that lovely part of Australia. I mean, how much higher is it gonna go? Damn, why does the plus minus not work? Let's go 33. Let's go in increments of 33. All good, all good. Good to hear. So where I was going with this, it's a big tangent. Hi Mick, the 600 KF. Okay, I anticipated that we wouldn't be able to do 1933 F clock, but it's always worth trying. Oop. I need to find the right button. Here we go. Whoop. Like, okay, I still haven't talked about scores. I do apologize for all my tangents, but you know, it's the weekend. Oh damn, I didn't fix this view. That is a bit embarrassing. There we go. Let's get into bias first. So Mick, I'm still in search of a good capture card for 3D Mark 06, believe it or not. This is now a Magewell Pro Capture HDMI. This is an expensive piece of kit, but I'm sick and tired iterating through different capture cards. I'm on my 6th capture card, I think, and they all can't do what I consider to be pretty common resolutions. Give me a better view of this damn thing. Okay, maybe not. Why is image search so hard? It's not dual HDMI. Let's go to their actual website. I think this is it. Yeah. So it's got an analog breakout here, but what I'm interested in is the HDMI. Anyway, that's the new capture card. It's got some good points and bad points. Yeah, Avermedia isn't very good with bias. I'm finding this card is good with bias, but I'll have to see because it doesn't have display pass through, so that's a whole other kettle of fish. Anyway, for those who just joined, the sort of background music of the day is a 5800X, which is actually the first 5000 series Ryzen I've ever owned. 1 year late, but better late than never. On an impact. Just gonna mess around a little bit, mostly in X265. But the actual conversation of the day is Alder Lake. So did 2 days of benching last week with DNOS 22. Put up some scores last night. But what held us back immensely is we just had the worst IC out of the 3. So apparently what's on the market at the moment is Samsung, Hynix, and I keep forgetting the other one. Hynix and Micron? Yes, Samsung, Hynix, and Micron. I've had a bad night's sleep. So there's Samsung, Hynix, and Micron are the bench relevant ICs I am aware of. Now there might be others, but basically the TLDR is Samsung and Hynix good, Micron bad. And we had a kit of 4800 bin, which is really low end for DDR5, single-sided Micron, and it's great. It was great to have it because availability is really scarce and we could at least, you know, power on a system with it. But it topped out at 5333, and Sammy single-sided will do whatever it is, 6000 plus, and tighter as well in this. So this, look, don't quote me on this. This is just from 2 days of very, very, very quick testing, but the Micron doesn't appear to do 1T under any circumstances. And I've seen scores out there that are 1T on other ICs. So that's another issue. Gear ratio, I think everyone's already heard or whatever, but I don't think gear 1 is a thing with DDR5 right now. I could be wrong. But everything defaults to gear 2. There is a gear 4. We didn't test that. Maybe for frequency validations and stuff, gear 4 is a thing, but gear 2, it seems like in 99% of cases you just do gear 2, and I don't think that's IC relevant, IC dependent. But 2T is all we could do on Micron. Maximum was not a thing on Micron, but that doesn't really surprise anyone, does it? But what I was saying earlier is, I wonder, I don't know, I have no way of knowing, but I wonder if maximum is a thing on Sammy to DDR5 as well. That would be kind of funny. What else do we want to do? I don't really like sort of remember. Do I want to do? Let's try should I try desynced RAM? I seem to recall that at least in a 1080p, desynced RAM actually ends up being faster on Ryzen if you get high enough. Let's do 4400. Let's try that. So yeah, those are the three ICs. My information on the instant F9. So one of the things I don't like about this I like that this capture card does distinguish between a blank screen and a no signal screen, but the no signal screen that it chooses to display is freaking ugly. But so those are the three ICs that are present in the memory profiles in the Apex board, and you can easily see just from the profiles that that Sammy and Hynix do way better than Micron, because even just, you know, these profiles are pretty like sort of noobish in a lot of cases, but the profiles built into the board out of the box are like Sammy 6000 but Micron 5200. So that's quite a difference. And I would hazard a guess, and it's only a guess, that if people were to buy Micron for an Alder Lake rig, they may as well stay on DDR4, because a good kit of like you know, if you're doing like even daily, like you can do like 4800 2T right on DDR4. And what's the difference between like 4800 C17 2T DDR4 and 5200 CAS 36 or whatever on DDR5? I mean, okay, there's obviously always like an asterisk on these things if you can make use of the extra bandwidth and stuff, I'm sure, but like just in a generalized sense, it doesn't seem to me like Micron would be worth upgrading to at this very moment in time from DDR4, especially considering, you know, how expensive it is and all that. Okay, so we just tried desync 4400 and for some reason it wouldn't do it. Maybe I need to lower FCLK. And well, let's just do 4266. On now, I've done very little Ryzen 3000 series onwards OC, but what I seem to recall is that on the 3600 LN2, I got better scores in X265 desync RAM, but of course that's with the FCLK lower because of the cold issues, so that's a big asterisk. But let's try it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? What else can I talk about, guys? Ask me anything about Alder Lake. A lot of things I don't know, but whatever, even if it's the most obscure question ever, I may be able to answer it, since embargo is over now. So embargo lifted at midnight Australian time yesterday, and I stayed up until 1:30 watching the scores come in and subbing scores myself, because there was a lot of little issues, like Geekbench doesn't allow a generation of valid links on unreleased hardware now, which meant that they have to like manually press a button. Do the eCores cold bug? No. Let me just start a run and I'll elaborate on that. I should get Zen timings on here, because now Encore is showing 1066, which makes me a bit nervous that the FCLK didn't take. Yeah, FPNSS, absolutely. I always caveat this with with the fact that I'm totally out of sync with daily considerations. I don't run a daily desktop system, so you shouldn't be taking advice from me. But my comment would be, if I have to give a comment, is that someone wanting to go to Alder Lake right this very moment, do DDR4, like with very few exceptions. Okay, let's do this run. So E-cores, ooh. I'm on one. Is this AMC crap? Like, why doesn't it want to do 4266 RAM? I don't really get it. This kit does. This cut on Intel. This kit does like 4933 2T. Should I be 2T'ing it? Maybe I should be 2T'ing it. I'll do like CL15 2T or something. Just even. I'm so rusty on Ryzen. People give me clues if you feel like that is required. Because I mean, I don't imagine in the sort of current sort of world situation that a DDR4 Alder Lake board would necessarily depreciate all that much. So if by some miracle in 4 months time DDR5 has gotten so much better that you feel like you need to keep your chip and then move to DDR5, I don't think it'd be a big deal. I think the gains on Alder Lake right now, with how I see it, are in the IPC and in all that, in the E-cores, in the higher number of cores and the better like power efficiency, the whatever, all those tweaks. It's not in the RAM right now. I mean, if you get the best kit in the world, of course it's in the RAM, but practically speaking, for what you can buy on the street right now, I don't think it's necessarily in the RAM. Okay, I'll elaborate on E-cores in a second. So the sort of situation in Australia was that as far as sort of sampling goes to reviewers or whatever, I think they were really tight about DDR4 boards because they wanted to promote the new tech, because obviously that's a money maker for them. So I haven't even really looked at the DDR4 boards, so that's a question I can't really answer. I would have thought that the Strixes would be okay, just because Strixes have always been pretty solid, but yeah, I'm sorry, no clue. So E-cores, we have a run and it is indeed slower than previously, but I'm obviously only at 4266, so I'll have to push it. So I'll just reiterate a little bit. So the three things basically that changed with Alder Lake is new memory tech, new process technology, and new or at least improved microarchitecture, right? So process, so you think this long awaited 10 nanometer Intel might be like a little bit dodgy. That's the first thing I asked actually while I was still under NDA was, will we face a challenge with cold bugs? Because usually, I mean, at least on the AMD side, this IMC seems a bit, I don't know, maybe I just don't know how to clock AMD RAM, but on AMD side, with every process change, we've seen a change in cold bug behavior. So when we went from whatever it was, FM2 to FM2 plus, that was a process iteration, and we got a cold bug. Then we went from, let's say, FM2 plus to whatever it was, AM4, and we went from cold bug to no cold bug, but within on 14 nanometer. I'll just flip the power switch, I don't really care. And then when we went from 14 to 12, that admittedly, like, that's a really small process step. It's like a half node, I guess. All we saw was a better, we actually didn't see anything. I don't think the memory controller getting better on cold was necessarily process related. But then we went from 12 to 7, and again we saw a big change. We saw this cold bugging, and again, maybe not necessarily process related, but we saw this issue with the cores where, so if we put aside the FCLK inverse scaling issue that we had from 12 to 7. There's also the cores, which may or may not cold bug. You know, you have to like have this sample variant stuff. And I believe we could easily see another sort of issue like that on AMD side, going from 7 to, I think they're only going 6 from mobile, right? So it's 7 to 5 is the next step coming up. That's right, AM5, DDR5, 5 nanometer. That's going to be the big thing, isn't it? On the 5th of the 5th, 2022, maybe. Get the fucker working. Yes, agreed. So all that to say, the process made fuck all difference this time around. What? Okay, I think this desync is just not the go. Let's go back. Let's go 1.75 and so Asus with their magic, and they, you know, you guys know every Apex board they pretty much worked their magic, built a board that is just, I mean, it was, in terms of cold behavior, an exact carbon copy of what the Apex 13 did. Basically, you flip the LN2 switch and you just pull down, and that's it. I just need to set our FCLK, which we had at 1900, I think, to make it synced. So a little bit surprising to me, but okay, I'll take it. So new process, but still full pot. And I mean, the guys, you saw the guys ran, the Zeus guys ran PyFast and Valads on Helium, so pretty much identical as far as we can see. That's cool, but pretty much identical, let's say, cold behavior, in the sense that it doesn't have like an apparent cold bug at all. Now, just to mention again, I mentioned it earlier, but there's a few more people on the stream now. There was a slight cold boot bug. One chip had -168. The other one, which is really nice because that's basically just, you let the benchmark finish, and if you crash, you can just hit reset and it's already warm enough. That was the first chip, which is really nice, really user friendly, let's say. But the second chip had, so there seems to be a little bit of variance. The second chip was more in the -140 something range, which is still not a big deal. It's only when you get into like the -120, -100 sort of range, which I don't think Intel has had. That's had sort of an issue in a while. So that's quite a bit of talk about DDR5 and process so far. So now microarchitecture. I mean, you've probably already sort of looked at the performance gains. What I find wild is all the benches that people don't necessarily look at, like the 3 Marco 5. I know it doesn't have points anymore, so people don't look at it, but someone posted a 3 Marco 5 that's 23% faster on the, like, that's insane. Legacies, just that, all that cache. Legacies are amazing. I want to run some 003 on it if I ever get a chip. Ooh, fastest ever, right? Am I on 2T? I don't think I even remember to switch 2T off. So yeah, IPC is nice. E-cores and P-cores, obviously a little bit of a learning curve there. So the really general breakdown would be, E-cores enabled may hold your cache back, because, don't ask me for all the details, but there does appear to be some sort of sharing in the uncore between those two types of cores. And as it's Atom, right, like you can sort of imagine that, let's say even ambient overclocking, you know, the P cores boost to 5.3 on ambient, right, or at least one of them does, or whatever, whereas the E cores boost, quote unquote, boost to 4.3 or 4.7 or something, like quite low. So there's clearly, it's not, I mean, yeah, it is a different microarchitecture, right? It's the same instruction set, x86, but it's a different microarchitecture, and then therefore, of course, clocks differently, i.e. lower. they don't cold bug. You can run everything full pod even with eCores enabled. But what will obviously happen is they just sort of taper off. I didn't do any massive amount of ambient testing, so I can't tell you what that particular chip did on the eCores on ambient. But what I can sort of say is that the cold scaling isn't fantastic, because above sort of 5.3, 5.4, you pretty much hit a wall. I mean, you can set higher, but don't really expect to finish a bench. SIMD. What does that stand for? So let's try our old trick of adding, what was it? Isn't it cache 64 or something is the big gain? Oh damn, I used to know this off. This is how little Ryzen clocking I've done in the recent past. I used to know which ones to enable off by heart. Was it? I think it might have even been White Shark back in the day that sent me a screenshot of which features to enable. Scrolling through PMs. Yeah. I know cache 64. I think it's something along the lines of, let's just try it. Something along the lines of this plus cache 64. I think that's right. So it's like, yes, now if I go custom, I just go cache 64. I think this is pretty much right. But let's try it. You mean the extra stuff? I mean, I would logically, I didn't test it, but logically I would say yes, because wouldn't that give you all kinds of trouble with the Windows scheduler if they didn't? Because you want the Windows thread scheduler not to do too complex of a job. You wanted to just pick the core size that's appropriate. You don't also want it to then have to decide, I have a slow task that would actually be useful to run on an eCore, yet the eCore doesn't support that instruction set. That doesn't really make any sense to me. So I would say tentatively, yes, they support all the features that the main core does. Damn it, where? Oh god, let's just go default. And let's clock up this chip a little bit. I'm curious to see how far I can get with 1.275. So AVX512, yes, it's entirely disabled to my knowledge. It got disabled, I think this is like in articles online as well, it got disabled relatively late in the like design process of Alder Lake, as far as I'm aware. They were having issues with that across the E-cores and P-cores, so they just disabled it. So that will also point towards all the cores having the same SIMD, right? Because if they chose to disable AVX512 rather than only having it on the P-cores, then that would mean that the instruction sets across both are the same. How would you measure that anyway? You would have to like force a workload onto the E-cores, which isn't necessarily that easy, given that the Windows scheduling is supposed to do that automatically. Okay, let's try 4.6. What else can I talk about? Maybe, but my understanding is that that's sort of like unsupported, quote unquote. Like, so in the sort of hypothetical scenario where you break your CPU because you enabled AVX512 and then you try to RMA your chip and mention the fact that you used AVX512, I think they can reject your RMA. I think that's my level of knowledge. Might be wrong. Oh, voltage tolerance. Yeah, okay. One sec, I'll just start a new run here. So 4-6 passes. Is 4-6 good for 5,000 series? I'm so out of the loop. I have done so little benching recently, and it's funny, amongst Aussie overclockers, people are like, "Oh, you're the AMD guy, right?" I have not seriously benched a Ryzen generation since 2nd gen. I've not benched Ryzen in 3 years, pretty much, with very, very few specific exceptions for like comps and things. Let's go higher. Let's do 50 megahertz steps. Yeah. So okay, so I've covered. There's no on the e-cores. There's no cold bug. You can obviously disable them really easily in BIOS. That's what you do to go get to this 8-core, this magical 8-core ranking for 12900Ks. Some of the benches, like the progress bar, again, we weren't running Windows 11, so maybe this is all fixed and la-di-da-di-da, but on basically the OSs that we could easily test on, the progress of certain benches was a bit like uneven. You could sort of almost guess that the OS was having trouble distributing the load. That's not to say that it ran slow. I think for given what the e-cores are, I mean, it's obviously not like a full fat 16 core result. Like in certain benches, you'll probably struggle to go up against a 50X or a 9960X. But in general, it felt like the performance was fine. It was just sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but you would sort of watch the progress bar and be like, why is it slow now? Why is it really fast now? I don't know, just idle speculation. Voltage tolerance. Again, ambient, I didn't do very much. We were very much pressed for time. On LN2, I would say how should I say it? Had you asked me before launch what my expectations would be of voltage tolerance, I would have expected lower voltage tolerance, because 10 nanometers is so much denser than 14. If I compare it to like 12 nanometer to 7 transition on AMD, I remember running like 14 and 12 nanometers. Sometimes I saw scaling up to like 1.85 volts in certain benches, multi-core, depending on your mount, depending on the number of the cores and stuff. But like the early Ryzen processes were pretty hardy. We didn't do valids, so I don't know about voltage tolerance for valids. We didn't kill any chips, and we didn't. This is a very general statement, but we didn't see any scaling above 1.7 set. But that's with the asterisk of there being a lot of droop. I don't know if this is a Zeus specific thing, but on the Apex there's a lot of droop, but that may be as designed. So there's this whole, I don't know if the manual is sort of public knowledge yet, so I don't want to go into it too much, but I did read the manual, which comes, I think I can say this, there's in the retail packaged Apex you get, instead of the driver CD, I don't know if this is a new thing, but you get a little USB stick, and it has Turbo V on it and Mem Tweak It and the OC tool and the manual in PDF form, and I read through that a little bit, and there was like a suggestion that high droop is what you want on this platform. I don't know how true that is, but it seems so. Just to give you an idea, again, we didn't like, there's this whole thing where Roman Derbauer already mentioned it in his video, that there's this Voltician like USB based voltage monitoring little PCB included with the Apex now. We did not use that. That may be a more accurate way of measuring voltage, but there are also read points, and we were stuck for time, so we read from the PCB read points. Now take that with a grain of salt. Maybe they're really, really crap or whatever. Maybe it's all about transients, who knows. But under load, we saw stuff like you set 1.65 vCore and you get drooped down all the way down into like the 1.45 type area maybe even 1.4 like 2. And that was on, I think there's 7 LLC levels. The extreme overclocking profile on that board presets LLC 5, so it can't be so terrible of an idea to have LLC 5, but on LLC 5, that's how much droop we're seeing, like 200 millivolts. And then we tested LLC 6 and 7. By the way, the LLCs are adjustable in OS as well, which seemed like a new thing to me, but I'm not really like all that up to date with how everything works in current gen. But yeah, we tested all the way up to LLC 7. You would still not get a flat voltage under load, which is probably not what you want. So they probably have a very, very, Shimano on them have very, very good reason to design the board the way that they did. But yeah, just to mention that when I talk about voltage tolerance, it's very sort of almost subjective, because every board will have different LLC and different droop handling. So yes, the extreme profile built into the board will set 1.65, and that is roughly around where those chips will stop scaling for multi-core, especially when in the 16 core mode. But that's not to say that with the perfect mount and the perfect pod and the perfect chip, you might not be able to get up to like 1.72 or something. So it's weird, even though it's a much denser process, in the end it's almost like multi-core, they have the same voltage tolerance, because a lot of like 10900Ks don't really scale above like 1.72 or something for multi-core. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just sort of remembering a lot of things from the top of my head right now. So what did I think about what Gigabyte pulled? Maybe last thing on voltage tolerance. Not that it's necessarily a surprise, but just to mention, it doesn't appear as though there's a separate cache voltage. And just to mention as well, even though this is like just totally public knowledge and all that, there's not a separate E-core voltage either. So they're both being fed from the same power plane. But that, again, I don't think that's really holding anything back. I mean, I'm sure if you had a separate voltage rail, you could probably maybe even clock the E-cores a little bit higher, because you could hyper optimize their voltage. But it must make sense to share that. Just to as we're on voltages, there is a V in that needs to go a little bit higher on LN2 for cold bug killer, but that's built into the like LN2 switch, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it's built into the LN2 profile, but it's not so. We messed around with that a little bit, thinking, ooh, is this like Haswell? Even though it doesn't have a fiver, do you like have to optimize V in to get your best scores or whatever? Excuse me, or whatever. But it doesn't seem to be the case. I think it just needs to go a little bit higher to help on cold with stability and stuff. It doesn't seem to actually, I don't think the cores necessarily scale off of this V in, but it's a little bit of a mystery to me. So it's I think it's something like 2 volts stock and then like 2.1 on LN2, or like 1.9 stock. Sorry, I think it's 1.8 or 1.9 stock, and then you go 2 volts on yes, so there is a cache voltage that we didn't touch. Yeah, there's a level 2 cache voltage, you're right. But the cores are fed on the same rail as the P cores. Yeah, so that's pretty much, in terms of like volts that aren't completely relevant, like PCH volts and stuff, all you've got is you've got your V core, no cache voltage, like I said. There's the V in, there's system agent, there's no IO anymore, and there is this L2 voltage, which it just has to go a little bit higher for LN2, but I don't think anything scales off of it. And on the memory side, I mentioned this earlier, but you have a lot of little, like, because you've got a fiver, essentially something like a fiver on the memory side, you have a lot of like little subvolts to tweak and stuff, and like almost like, I don't want to say LLC levels, but there's like different like power delivery options that are not just a voltage. But the 2 volts, I need a screenshot in front of me to really remember what they're called, but the 2 volts that are relevant to the RAM itself, well, the 3, there's system agent, which obviously the RAM scales with, just like on previous platforms, but then there's like VDD and VDDQ QV or VDDQ or something, and like the VDD needs to be higher than the other one. So a typical setup would be, you know, stock would be 1.15 on VDD, and then like if you're trying to, at least the micron stuff that I was using, you might sort of flatline around 1.4 on that, and then just set like, the other voltage doesn't seem to do very much in my limited testing. It just needs to be like 50 millivolts lower. So we have a 1.7 pass. I don't think I saved this yet. Damn, I should have picked a bench that lasts longer so I can talk longer while the run is ongoing. Okay, let's keep going up. 50 megahertz steps. So, okay, this will come off as a bit noobish, but I didn't find like a super easy way to get a Windows 11 ISO at the time, so I just stuck with Windows 10. That may have hurt some of our 16 core performance, but to be honest, purely from a benching perspective, it's a much more interesting 8-core CPU anyway, because the way it sort of works with the E-cores is, I think that, so from a purely hardware submission points gathering type perspective, a chip with just a small relative number of E-cores will be really good. Like something like a 12600K is great because you've got 6 P cores and 4 E-cores. So it's like the ratio of P cores to E-cores is 2:1. So it's like those small cores don't hold back your performance so much that you can't get a global first in the 10 core category. Whereas with the 12900K, you're going up against a really strong 16, like let's say quote unquote true 16 core, the 5950X, and you struggle because half of your cores are slow in comparison. So the 12900K, I mean, sure, for daily and stuff, I guess you just keep the E-cores on, but in terms of benching, it's much more interesting to run it as like a straight comparison to the 11900K, because it's, again, then with the E-cores off, you can submit it in the 8-core category as an 8-core 16 thread, and I think that's like the really interesting part. So I didn't try 11. Look, people talk about 11 like it's the only way to get the best thread scheduler for Alder Lake. Maybe that's like the status quo, like right this very moment. But from what I understand, it's coming to Windows 10, because like 11 is going to be rolled out. I think it even says on their website, 11 is going to be slowly rolled out to all the systems worldwide, basically, that want it, for an entire year, like October to October. You can't afford to have Alder Lake systems running for almost an entire year with the wrong scheduler. So I'm not saying that this bench session I did last week was like the optimal approach. It probably was running on the wrong scheduler or whatever. But I think for daily purposes, don't consider Windows 11 to be an absolute must for Alder Lake as things stand this very moment. Okay. And overall, I just think the idea of Windows 11 is just ridiculous, to be honest. Just the changelog for Windows 11 should be one entry, incremented version number in order to keep up with Mac OS. And oh, sorry, the second entry, move the start button to the center of the screen for no damn reason. Okay, 4800. So increase system requirements. That's a good one. Okay, so we've had one instance die. Now I think we have a full hang up. Let's give it 25 millivolts more. Let's actually check if CPU Z is keeping track of that. So now I've talked for an hour and 8 minutes, and I haven't even talked about the scores yet. But okay, let's continue the FAQ for a little bit. So update. Oh, okay, so it does update. Okay, let's go again. My chill is set to 22 degrees. I need to give it a little bit more. Just while I'm down here, I dug this up. Someone guess the card. Maybe I should show the ports. That might give a clue, or maybe not. Okay, what else can we talk about? Ooh, that's a hang. All right, let's give it a little bit more. GTX 260, good guess. Yeah, it's the 9. I keep forgetting what it's actually officially called, but it's the 900 series Titan, and not the dual one. Was that Titan Black stuff? That dual core, whatever it was called, that dual core Titan, was that a 700 series or a 900 series? I wasn't around back then, so I don't really know. Okay, so Optiplex, a Core 2 Duo, hard drive, 4 GB of RAM, Windows 11. My God. Okay, hopefully this is not too much of a tangent, but I do feel like oh, a dead instance again. I do very much feel like people are too into this instant gratification stuff these days. Like, people see that there's a new OS out and they just want to try it for the sake of trying it. I mean, it's pretty much, I mean, it's public knowledge that Windows 11 will not improve your daily experience in most cases. Why go to the hassle of an upgrade? I just don't get it. Wow, we've just fallen off a cliff voltage wise. Alder like $500. Oh, I wanted to, let's actually just slowly just quickly go to, so this is Australian pricing at my local retailer here. I think, I mean, 500 AUD to USD, 370 US dollars for a 6P core 4E core chip. I think, okay, I just think that you can't go wrong there. That's what I would be getting. I mean, obviously depending on your use case and all that, but, and then you know, the ridiculous stuff is paying $100 for an iGPU. Holy, who would do that on an i9? That's insane. That is just completely brain dead. So, I mean, to be fair, these are the new iGPUs, right? I wonder if anyone has done an iGPU review yet. Actually, considering the high prices of DGPUs these days, I think an iGPU review on Alder is pretty much it's in order. You know, like maybe these things are fast enough to replace like a 1030 or something. Who knows? Hi, Tix. I said I know you. I guess you joined late, but DDR4 boards are not really being sampled right now, to the best of my knowledge. It's just that you can see the point of view of Intel and the board manufacturers, right? They're only offering DDR4 because there is not enough DDR5 availability, basically. If they had their way, if the world was a different place, basically, both Intel and the retailers the motherboard manufacturers would be very happy to make Alder Lake a DDR5 only platform, I think. But it's just the reality of it is that we anticipate a very, very big shortage and a very, very big price premium for DDR5 for ever and ever and ever. Yeah, for daily, DDR4 is for sure the play. So I don't have a board. I don't intend to get a board. The stuff that I benched on the weekend was all borrowed anyway. So what they supply in order to highlight what the platform is possible, what that platform is capable of, is all DDR5. Those places like Hardware Unboxed that are doing DDR4 to DDR5 comparisons, to the best of my knowledge, they paid for the DDR4 board because they thought, they made the judgment call that there's such an interest for videos about DDR4 versus DDR5 in order to help people with their buying decisions, that they decided to use their like Floatplane, whatever, Patreon money or whatever, or Google Ads money to buy that second board and then run the comparison. Because it's like opposite goals, right? The goal of the people buying the hardware is to figure out whether or not DDR5 makes sense and possibly save money and go DDR4, whereas the goal of the memory, chip, and motherboard manufacturers is to hide DDR4 as much as possible and pretend DDR5 is the only way to go. So yeah, I didn't compare, but I'm sure that I'm fairly certain that for a daily scenario, even getting DDR4 board and then upgrading to DDR5 at a later point makes more sense than DDR5 straight away, because pricing and availability and everything will just be absolutely horrendous for a long time to come. Like if I had to guess, I would say at least until AM5 launch. And at that point, if you're waiting until the AM5 launch anyway, maybe AM5 is the better platform to upgrade to anyway, from whatever you've got right now, so and buy it today. Yeah, if you want a shiny new toy, like not every decision in your life has to be rational. There's too many people pretending. Ooh, almost 100 FPS. There's too many people around who pretend that the way to to lead a fulfilled life is to always be rational about everything. If you want a shiny new toy, get it and enjoy it. But yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, the big gains are to be gotten right this very moment. The big gains are in the chip itself, not the RAM you attach to it. You just have to sort of remember too, people haven't really done XOC on the DDR4 IMC yet, because they're all, a lot of the scores you see so far are sponsored or in some way, and they, the extreme overclockers as well are being pushed to do the DDR5 side only. But if someone in the XOC community were to get a capable DDR4 board and full pot the chip, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the greatest DDR4 IMC of all time, even beating Rocket Lake. And we see like Gear 1, whatever, 4400 C12 or something. It's just that, and it's not being dishonest or anything, but I just think that it's in the manufacturer's interest to sort of de-emphasize that, so yeah. Even benching wise, I could imagine, I don't know, I didn't try it, but I could imagine that DDR4 could be relevant. Okay, so now let's talk about scores a little bit. Finally, an hour and a quarter in. But keep asking me questions if you think of anything. Oh, for benching, yeah. That's what I was sort of independently getting to before you said it, or before I read your message, Mick. It could very well be. It's just that board manufacturers have to play ball as well. What if there isn't a single board out there that full pots, because all the high-end boards are DDR5, and we did see some LN2 results for DDR5 already. And if this sort of becomes a narrative within like the YouTube, Reddit, whatever space, that DDR4 is better than DDR5 on Alder Lake, I would imagine that in short order, at least they, like the likes of G-Skill and stuff, would unlock a small number of high bin kits. I've already heard up to 7,000 bin kits. I think that we could easily get into a scenario where the right benchers sort of get seeded kits that are not retail available yet, and then sort of quote unquote prove the point of DDR5 being better than the DDR4 to bridge the gap between now and the point in time where it will actually be better for the average bencher, the average daily person. Okay, let's actually just save this. Again, I mean, I'm not like sort of like, let's go back. It's not like an, hopefully you're not reading me wrong. Like, it's not an accusation as such. It's like it's just good business practice, right? Like you can't fault them. That's just, they want to sell their new tech. It happens all the time, right? Like when we went from CRTs to flat screens for many years, objectively flat screens were worse than CRTs, but they were still pushing flat screens because it's like, oh, it's cheaper to build and it's smaller, it's less, you know. Someone asked earlier about what Gigabyte did. Can I say no comment? I honestly feel a bit uncomfortable talking about it. I just think that there's like more to the, I don't know what the full story is. My feeling would be that there's more to the story than what, let's say, Roman said in his video. So the scores didn't end up getting subbed, and to the best of my knowledge, please correct me if I'm wrong, the product page that for a while mentioned the record has been corrected now. So yeah, it's not ideal. It's, I would put it sort of very roughly in the same category as the ASRock 2 dimmers, where it's like they're sort of half pretending that their Aqua boards are getting all these records, but it's not the Aqua board, it's an ES version of the Aqua board that has 2 less slots. I think it's sort of in that sort of category. But there's no sort of sugarcoating the fact that it is a fake score. But we've had it before. We've had like MSI putting up fake memory frequency validations on AMD, I think. I don't know. It's something that happens. I don't condone it. But it's been fixed in pretty short order, and that's all I'll say about it. Hopefully that's enough. Anyway, let's give it a bit more volts. We just had a crash. Let's go 1.4, and that's as far as I'll probably go. They put up like a marketing slide type thing saying Gigabyte is this and this Gigabyte board did 8G on the cores and 8G on the memory. And I think they probably did do 8G on the memory. That seems to be pretty easy this generation. But 8G on the cores was just a bugged CPU-Z run. And if you sort of want to hear a bit more about it, I guess go to Roman's. Hold on. So I'll put this in the chat. This gives a summary of the fake OC results posted by Gigabyte. Okay. X79. Yeah. Oh no. I mean, fault the manufacturers for pushing DDR5 even though DDR4 is the better choice. Yeah, that's just a matter of like personal opinion. I think there's no right or wrong answer. There's like good arguments either way, I think. I don't think I did a 1.4V run yet. I mean, it's been taken down, right? So okay, so X79, what do you do on your daily? I mean, you do streaming and stuff. Do you stream off that X79 board? And what do you have in there? Do you have Sandy E or IVE tech tested? Okay, I'll give it 250 millivolts more because I'm greedy. Oh yeah, that's a Xeon. I don't recognize, but it sounds to me like an IVE. I mean, what are your use cases? Do you game on that, or I mean, I would say if you've been happy with the DDR4 rig or DDR3 rig up till now, what's sort of the reason Ivy Bridge 8? That's nice. What would be the reason to upgrade it? But again, like I said, if you want a shiny new toy, go for it and be happy. Um, I'm gonna try 4.8 4K. I don't know how this is gonna go though. Oh, so it's a Rampage Extreme. Oof, that didn't go very far. Let's try non-overkill. So what does everyone think of the scores that have been posted? I mean, pretty impressive results in like things like X265. There was that PyFast on XP, but Splave beat it. I find it sort of sad. I don't know what you guys think, but I find it sort of sad that this is the first Intel launch in 20 years where XP didn't take any records, essentially, because Legacy 3D hasn't been on XP for a while now. 32M, there was no score. I wonder what the reason is behind that. Let's not stir up that. Like, I sort of came around on the whole dual ranking thing. I have to say, like, I spent like an hour subbing scores last night because basically you have like twice as many scores to sub per SKU. I think for newbies is confusing. It's already hard to get newbies to sub on HyperBot correctly as it is, and now you have to sort of tell them, because I feel like newbies don't necessarily do much core unlocking, so that sort of level of complexity is hidden to them. They just put in, 12900K and then sub. So I don't know. I feel like it's a minus from that sort of moderation type standpoint. But there are rumors out there that AMD is going big little as well. So the whole Intel, like, bias towards Intel by HyperBot is that whole like argument is sort of diminished now in my mind, now that I sort of know pretty with a pretty high level of certainty that AMD is going big little as well, from like there's some leakers out there that have been right most of the time in the past. Yeah, but not anytime soon. That's open to interpretation, right? So what the leak says is, so you're getting stacked cache whenever it is really soon on Zen 3. Then you're getting Zen 4 next year. And then Zen 5 would be big little. But what I'm trying to say is, it's sort of like a somewhat painful evolution in the HyperBot rankings that will pay off within 2 years. And I'm sort of indifferent to it now. My first reaction to the thread was, oh no, not another let's validate on all cores bullshit thread by Roman. But now I'm sort of like, I can see both sides. I'm not super duper fucking thrilled about it. I think it just makes subbing harder. It makes looking at rankings harder. Well, again, this is just the leaks, right? Take it with a grain of salt. The leak states that a smaller CCX would be the little in the big little. So you would have something along the lines of Zen 5 P cores or big cores and Zen 4 small cores. Or maybe not even two different microarchitectures, but you would have like a, let's say, 12 core CCX as the big complex, and then like an 8 core as a little or whatever. Save the drama for the launch. Did I save my 4K? Yes, I did. Okay. So next thing to check would be, no, we don't have maximum. Okay. Maybe drop it 50. Okay, so but to elaborate, maybe to just go into a little bit more nuance on the whole thing, I do strongly believe that there is an inconsistency in the rankings now, because if you look at FX, according to a lawsuit in the state of California, or wherever it was, that's a 4-core CPU. According to Geekbench, if you sub on Geekbench, it'll come up as a 4-core GPU or CPU. There's somewhere else, some other bench that like has data files that considers it to be a 4-core. Yeah, so that argument is over now too. So the like Intel bias argument has been diminished. The why doesn't FX get the same treatment argument has now been like eliminated. So there's less of a reason to sort of oppose it. But I do like the sort of angle that I have trouble with is, for years and years and years and years we've been told you can't use a newer CPU and go down to an old core count. That's unfair. You can't turn whatever 7700K into 7350K and then sub it in the 2-core category. But now suddenly we can, you know? So that, if you look at it from a very, very high level, it does seem like a bit of a cheat or a bit of a like revisionist history type thing. But you have to also sort of acknowledge that, you know, it's a new architecture. It's, yeah, it's just an evolution of the rankings and stuff. Cooking dinner, what's for dinner? So dropping 50 megahertz seems to have done the trick. 6-3, that's a whole other kettle of fish, isn't it? I forgot about that. Ugh. I jinxed myself. Okay, let's go down another 50. Rotisserie chicken, nice. Enjoy. Yeah, sorry, I don't really want to end up in a situation where we have to rebench all the 3-core globals. That sounds just so dumb. Oof. Yeah, now I don't have. I didn't consider that sort of viewpoint. Yeah, now it all sounds just. Now that's overcomplicated everything. Man, like core disabling to get to the 3-core, that's just so lame. Fuck. If that becomes a thing, that's I'll be angry. That's a pain. Oh yeah, that's actually what we should do, is enable remove mem and try that. Yeah, the 8-core, it's so much more recent though, if you get me. Like there's such a, I mean, it's not, this is not to excuse the fact, but like at least 8-core, all you're competing against is last gen, and like everyone should be aware that usually when a new generation comes out, you might, because if we were in a like, if this was a different architecture and we had like an i9 that was 12 cores and an i7 that was 8 cores, you would still have to rebench 8 cores, you know. So I don't mind that fact all that much, but god, getting rid of Phenoms with tri-core, that's brutal. That's so bad. Okay, let's do remove mem. Wow. Now, I really sort of like the fact that globals below 4 cores and under are sort of just locked in. It's nice. It means it gives some relevance to old hardware. Okay, now we have removed mem set. We can go 1.95. I should maybe add a fan. It is a pretty hot spring day. Now let's do CL12. Yeah. You mean this? This amazing setup? I imagine you would be able to. Why wouldn't you? Then again, nothing surprises me. Yeah, so anyway, leaving that globals discussion to one side because it is a bit depressing to think about. What else is there to talk about? So I thought this was an interesting comparison, actually. See this 6400C24 on LN2 by SafeDisk. See, that's like legit DDR5 performance. I don't know if you can match that on DDR4 necessarily all that easily. They really went all out on 4K for some reason. And XA started benching again. Put a nice little post on Facebook about it and stuff. Good to see him back. He was like semi-retired. Okay. Let's do like a stockish run just to make sure we're not running out of memory. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I was sort of talking on about that earlier, that it's just overall harder to get your timings like tuned on DDR5, because when you get a kit of DDR4, it might have an XMP of 15, CL15. And when you're benching, you tighten it down to 12. So it's like your choices are 12, 13, 14, or 15. It's so easy, right? When you get a stick of DDR5, your XMP might be like CL40. Yet on LN2, it might tighten down to 24. You have 16 different CAS latencies. That's just the first timing to consider, you know. So it's not that easy. I didn't even watch the memory consumption. Okay, that's pretty safe. Okay, cool. Let's clock up. Yeah, I mean, okay, call me Tim. You might have just joined. This is probably the third time I'm reiterating this. For daily, for daily, get a DDR4 board with your Alder Lake if you feel like you need to go Alder Lake. instead of waiting for 3D Cache, Ryzen, or Zen 4. Full stop. I sign that with my own like name, blood, whatever. I think I'm pretty confident in that statement that for daily right now, DDR4 is the way to go. But of course, it is the technology of the future. In 3, 6, 9, 12 months' time, it will be better. It is inevitable, you know? 5900X, nice. That's pretty cool. Supplier ratios and all that good stuff, and see how much gain we got from that little CL12 tune we did there. Yeah, I mean, if you're on 5th gen, I mean, God, I mean, my quote-unquote daily is an 1800X. It's not even technically eligible for Windows 11. So yeah, please. Oops. Might just be putting more. Ooh, the blue screen is not coming up on my capture card. Interesting. What I was gonna say, please keep asking questions. This is not gonna be a long stream. I just wanted to share my Alder Lake experience while it's fresh, you know, just post launch essentially. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If anyone wants to ask anything benching related whatsoever, when XP is working on Asus boards, at least the Win 7 is working, so that's good. Win 10, of course, Win 11. I saw server 2012 results. I mean, 3D is massive, right? You saw the 3D scores. I mean, just across the board 3D records. That's really, really nice. The I mean, you've seen the shots, right? The way that the socket, not the socket, the socket isn't long, but the heatsink is so, like, the IHS is so long on that chip. It makes it so distinctive. It's like there's no chip, you know. I own pretty much chips all the way from DDR through DDR2, 3, and 4, for all platforms pretty much, and none of them are that skinny, you know. It's like just those bolted on 8 E-cores make the core long. I mean, the Haswell core is long and skinny too, but it's not really reflected in the IHS shape. It just, you just delit it and you're like, ooh, that's a skinny core. But the, you know, this being so many cores, it's like the IHS shape has to like be sort of the same shape as the cores in a way. 96.5. I can no longer sort of remember what my scores were, but I'll just keep plugging away at it. I should probably an hour and 45 minutes into the stream look at the actual scores that I'm trying to beat. Oh, 30 harbor points, not bad. This has been benched quite a bit. That was the fun part about 5th gen. The price was terrible, but the fact that it got benched so much on LN2, I enjoyed that aspect. H2O, ooh, 23. Oh no, I'm not. I'm looking at 1080p. 596. Oh, there's not a single? Why am I don't get it. Why am I scoring so high? I'm getting 96s at 4.8. Oh, that's a good score. Weird. What's holding other people back? That's a 96.5. Ooh, I have a 96.9 though. That was with 50 extra megahertz, surely. Might chill down a bit more. Let's just do a few reruns. Okay, so we've got our 96.9. I like to be able to do the 48 again. Let's go 47.75. I'd like to finish off on a 97. That'd be fun. To go along with my 1.97 CPZ. The only other thing I've heard people talk about who want to buy Alder Lake, besides complaining about the cost of DDR5 and the lack of performance, is the cost of boards. And I'm like, well, it's because only the flagship chipset has launched. You know, if you're cost conscious, wait for, I don't know, even know what the other 600 series chipsets are going to be called, but like obviously PCI 5 is expensive, you know. What other way would you imagine it to be? Oh, 97.4. Can we beat Matt? Oh, so close. He's got 25 megahertz on me. Damn it. Gotta beat Matt. It's like, it's so funny. Like, I don't know, I suppose it's again one of the signs of this instant gratification type society we live in, but people being like, ooh, the top end chipset is too expensive, which should be less expensive. And it's like, well, it's the top end chipset. It's not, it's like, it's not a value proposition, you know? It's not. There's a reason this stuff launches first. It's to kind of twist the arm of the people who are on the fence and have them buy something they don't really need, you know? Is this gonna be the big one? Oh yeah, I mean, marketing is obviously a part of it as well. Oh, it looks good. Looks very, very good. Boom, 98.2. So with the right instructions, maybe another 25 megahertz on the cores, maybe a little bit better timings and stuff. Maybe I can get like 33 megahertz more F clock. This is a 100 FPS run for sure. So sorry to be so blunt about it, but like what is Brutech, for example, doing? Like, is that just a non-overkill run or something? How is 5.3 on Cascade slower than 4.825 on Chiller? I don't really get it. It is an overkill run. Cast 18. Call me old-fashioned, but when I go to the trouble of mounting a cascade to a board and insulating and so on, which is not very often because I don't own one, but if I were to own one, I would still also go to the trouble of, you know, tightening the RAM a bit. But call me old-fashioned. Call me old-fashioned. Okay, not this time. That would be a, you know, breaking the terms of service of Twitch, and I'm on good ground with them currently, so don't want to rock that boat. Let's put it this way: there's you know, there's some streams on the front page of Twitch that might tickle your fancy. Okay. I should get 1.97 mil. Am I on OnlyFans? Not yet. If I need some cash, maybe. Okay, so benching CPZ. Let's do some all-core valids to finish off the stream. Any last Alder questions? Please ask them now. A nice quick 2-hour stream. It's 9 o'clock at night. I had probably I had about 5 hours of sleep last night. Yeah, so I'm not the freshest. I also am out of practice in terms of streaming. But does anyone know, is there like a science to the batches? This is a I don't know if this is a new batch or an old batch. Let's double check. So this is a 2051 SUT 5800X. Should have eaten dinner earlier. $3 signs, yes. Very tempting. Well, you can always watch FB NSS. You can always watch the stream on playback. Anyway, I think I've sort of reached the end of what this chip will do in terms of core for X265. I mean, 5G isn't so impressive, is it, on this generation of Verizon? So apparently that was too much. I'll do I go to 1.5 just to get that all core 5G out. I'm trying to remember all the like what are the talking points? Surely there's something else to talk about in terms of benching. Totally blanking. Anyway, if someone just has a big question sort of pop into their head at some point, you can feel free to hit me up on Discord. It's probably where I hang out the most. I mean, I have a Twitter and stuff as well, but I can't really promise to answer to my PMs or whatever what they're called on that in a timely manner. Let's do that try hard move of enabling XOC mode. Bye, call me Tim. Thanks for stopping by. Come on, give me that juicy 5G valet. There we go. 5G exact. Five on two. Okay. I'll leave it there. Just under 2 hours. I'm really tired and my voice is going, but it was fun hanging out with you guys. I think it's weird having a November launch of a product, but Intel sort of needed to do it to get back in the game, and get back in the game they did, both in terms of performance and price performance. So I'm excited about what's to come. Still hoping that a 32M gets subbed sometime in the next couple of days, because it's not an Intel launch without a 32M world record. I don't know when I'm going to stream next. Just in time for the Christmas season, indeed. It's getting really hot here, even 9 o'clock at night. It's sort of challenging to be in the bench room. Yeah, since lockdown is over, no more like weekly streams, but I'll try to keep everyone up to date on what I'll do. Yeah, hopefully see you next time. Thanks for watching, and like, share, and subscribe, and buy them DDR4 Alder boards. Don't waste your money on DDR5. Aussie weather, yeah, indeed.